are on board with Israel's actions because
I
of
mean,
the
I think this is
instability it's bringing. But what's your take on that as a sort of development?
I mean, yes. I think they're. I mean, I think the Arab countries have to say that. I mean, I think there is one. They are concerned about the instability. Don't get me wrong. I really do believe that. But they also want to do it because they don't want Iran to then view the GCC as legitimate military targets that they can launch and respond to against because of what Israel is doing. I think what you're seeing the U.S. and the Arab states saying is, at least publicly, hey, Iran, this is your fight with Israel. But the problem that the Iranians are running into is if Israel basically has achieved, because again, their air force was never going to be a problem per se for the Israelis. It was more the air defense. And
so also what I would also add, just like very quickly on your take, also James is up. I want to get his thoughts. Is that the Israelis have already made it clear. I think it's the National Security Advisor who made that statement, but like they have no plans, quote unquote, to target the leadership of Iran. So this is all about taking out the military personnel and infrastructure, not the power structure itself, which is obviously like that would be what would Iran do in that instance? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting that they have their certain red lines, and I'm curious what people think about them.
Yeah. So what I would say though, again, so the thing is, Israel now has managed to destroy, or at least maybe not destroy, but gut the Iranian air defense, where it's not a problem, because now you have Israel basically have air superiority over Iran and freely being able to conduct strikes. But to your point, Peter, like if you look at the target list, what they're striking, even within the military structure, we're not seeing strikes against, let's say, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps ground forces. We haven't seen, like, if they wanted to do regime change, for example, one area you're going to target is the besieged, right? And so the Israelis aren't targeting that. Who are they targeting? They're it's funny, and we literally, I was in the space yesterday with James as a co-host, and then with Megan, I told James, like, if I'm telling you right now, the one area that they're going to start targeting assassinations is the command leadership of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Aerospace Forces. That's the people who the Israelis are going to target. And sure, and during the space, boom, we got the report. They not only targeted the leader, but the subsequent commander, because the one that I'm looking at is called the Al-Ghadir Missile Command. That's under the IRGC Aerospace Forces. Those are the guys that control the ballistic missiles. And that's because what Israel is doing is they want to prevent Iran from retaliating. They either
I do have a little bit of breaking news.
Go ahead,
mate. You know the game. So coming from Emmanuel Fabian, Palestinian media reports an impact in the West Bank town of Sair near Hebron after the IDF warned of a ballistic missile that was fired from Yemen. And there's an image attached. I'll put that in the chat group. But just an update here that there's been an early warning radar installation near that area has been struck apparently.
So, and then that was what we had to kind of check to see if there's any damage. But regardless, I mean, I'm just going to go back to this aspect that we're not really seeing Iran able to really muster so far an appropriate response or even a defensive operation. And what we're seeing from the diplomatic side, I would say, is kind of this. Countries in the back end just taking a step back and saying, hey, we're not involved in this. And I also believe that Iran is very cognizant that they don't want to expand this to the other countries, because if Israel is able to kind of isolate Iran and operate freely, just imagine if you add the United States into the mix. And I think that's where Iran is like that is too much for us right now, and we can't handle it. The Israelis says this. I said this in the video stream. I'll say now right before we ended. This has given me the vibe of the 6-Day War, when Israel was able to launch a surprise attack and really decimate the Arab armies back then during the 6-Day Wars. This is giving a similar historical context in comparison. Piotr, back to you.
Thanks, mate. I think it's just crazy. A colleague of mine has said that Netanyahu planned this back in November. So clearly, there's been some coinciding with the US and the change in administration. What I think is interesting is to know how much the US was involved or not, because in the early hours of yesterday, sort of the US was distancing itself or saying that it had no role to play in the events. But since then, Trump has sort of, I don't know if backtrack's the right word, but shifted narrative and said, actually, it was 60 days. I gave a warning to Iran. This is day 61. And you guys, this is what you get. So, and then they obviously intercepted some of the drones coming from Iran. So it seems like the US is a bit all over, or maybe that's been all part of the play, as we said on the live stream. Someone thought that maybe this was all smoke and mirrors, Trump and Netanyahu deliberately having this bad relationship or perceived bad relationship, so that the Iranians are drawn into a false sense of security or whatever. But I think what it also illustrates, right, is just how much intelligence has been evolving. We've seen Operation Spiderweb with the Ukrainians. Some people say that they took that inspiration from the from the Israelis last year over the pager bombing with Hezbollah. And now is the Israelis who've done it again. So there's a remarkable sort of flurry of these sort of feints and, pulling the wool over people's eyes sort of thing. But James, you're sort of, following this a lot more than many. So what's your take on developments right now, and specifically on the Lebanon front and Hezbollah?
So I don't know if you saw the statement from the Lebanese state and from Hezbollah. So the Lebanese state said, like all the Arab countries and like Citrip said, they're like, this is a fight between Israel and Iran. We condemn the attack on any sovereign nation, blah, blah, like the usual blah, blah. And the fact that on one side, they have to be like against Israel in that statement. And then following that, the statement was sent internally inside the security apparatus and through the entirety of the Lebanese structure, telling Hezbollah that you have no right or no permission to strike or to initiate any attack from the Lebanese territory. And if you do, you're gonna be subject to Lebanese authority structure. So the Hezbollah then comes out with a statement talking about being like supportive of what's happening in Iran, but said that as of now there is no retaliation or attack for this that's gonna go out from Lebanon, which shows some sort of containment on that end. Now, the real situation, and we talked about it with Citrap yesterday for around 4 or 5 hours. As soon as it happened, it was quite a surprise in terms of size, in terms of targeting, in terms of what was targeted, and we've had a continuous strikes every 1.5 to 2 hours on Iran in different locations. So mostly big depots of weapons outside of Tehran, specific assassinations and attacks inside of the inside of Tehran, and at the end of the day, it seems to be a very calculated attack with a lot of targets. It reminds me of the first couple of weeks when Israel started after the pager attack to attack Lebanon. They went through a bank of target, attacking constantly on a shorter distance. That's something we need to point out. So we had more and more strikes, but where you had every couple of hours, you had a list of people that were killed and targets that were being hit. The main point, based on what I'm seeing, is not forced regime change by killing the leadership. It's forced regime change by imposing enough of a pressure on the hardliners and on the people that are very close to the IRGC to lead to either the reformists
But James,
or the revolutionary.
if I can just
Yeah.
expand on your point with a question, right? So one of the things that's coming to mind for me quite evidently is just whether or not you agree with this from a moral perspective or Israel's actions in Gaza. Just purely from a military standpoint, this is a very clean and effective intervention, isn't it? And sort of what? So you're saying this isn't about regime change, or it is? But what are you suggesting that they're trying to stimulate sort of on the ground? Like we saw with
Yeah,
Masa Amini sort of thing, for people to be more confident to try and overthrow the regime from the bottom up, so to speak.
they want to weaken the regime. They want to weaken the structure enough in order for something to happen on the ground. Whenever you attack a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 leadership, you are technically destroying the knowledge, the know-how, and the way those people work to control the country or to control what's happening. And right now, that's what we see. Like, we see an actual destruction of the model, and Khamenei, instead of focusing on retaliation and attacking the Israeli territory, is focusing on finding replacement for his entire tier 1 leadership. So in terms, the main focus is that they can put pressure. If they can put pressure like this for a week, for 2 weeks, for 3 weeks, you will reach a position where tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 in the organizations are done, and you have people that are not as qualified and are complete unknowns in power, which would lead to more divergent views, and more divergent views would lead to more instability on the ground, allowing for I don't know if it's the monarchists, I don't know if it's the reformists internally inside of Iran, but someone to take over and change a bit the model, to distance themselves from what's happening right now and what has been happening for the last 15 to 20 years in terms of the expansionist project of Iran in the region.
Absolutely, mate, and I think this also comes at a time, Israel's been under pressure. Well, maybe they don't feel it, but the West, European states are obviously making noises about operations elsewhere. So in this regard, it's going to be interesting to see how other capitals respond, or what they say about Israel's activity there. Voice, I know you've got your hand up, so what did you want to add in?
Before I add in, just some breaking news from Israeli media channel 12. They're reporting there is an attack on Isfahan right now as well. So you might want to add that to your list. I disagree with my colleague James here regarding the elimination of the IRGC leadership in order to some sort of an encouragement, rather small or big, of a regime change. I think this is not on Israel's or America's agenda right now, simply because of the fact that Reza Pahlavi is not in Iran, and it will create a massive void that no one can estimate in time. So as long as there is not a replacement in line, it would be very hard for us to even talk about a regime change right now. But what is interesting is that if you look at who they eliminated, it's mostly commanders of the IRGC Air Force. And this is, of course, more with the intention to cause disruption in the chain of command when it comes to launching ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, launching of the drones. This is the aim of it. And you can see it on the ground. You can see there is not some sort of a fluid action by the Iranian regime on the ground when it comes to launching those. And I think we saw a very interesting example for that today, that I can go into details with the drones that got launched from Iranian territory. I can get into that if you want, Peter, but it will take a couple of minutes, so it's up to you as the co-host of the space.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we can do. We might have to jump in with breaking news such as this, which is that an explosion has been heard near Tehran's Mehrabad airport. That's according to Iran International English. So again, quite sort of, I don't know if sporadic is the right word, but random locations you would think, but actually very much targeted. Mario had an interesting question, which was sort of why haven't some of the larger nuclear facilities in the east been hit? And it seems to be Israel has a very particular approach to this. As clearly this is a decision that has multiple rounds. Whether or not this continues into the night or continues over the weekend remains to be seen. But depending upon how much the Israelis feel that they've crippled or can cripple the Iranians further, they've got a very clear blueprint of what they want to achieve. And I reiterate sort of my point before, which is that this is quite a exceptional illustration of military efficiency or precision. So yeah, we're also trying to get some more speakers to join us. One friend of ours, Amir, is in Iran, and he keeps trying to join, but clearly it's obviously being affected by events at the moment. But Amir, if you can find a stable Wi-Fi, we'd love to hear from you. Voice, go for it.
Yeah, Piotr, one thing I also said in Mario's live stream was that we have to remember that the really sensitive nuclear facilities are deep underground. And this is not something you can do in one or even two strikes or in a matter of couple of hours. The Israeli Air Force right now is first causing an initial shock, which buys it more time, which means you do quicks in and out of those facilities, then you come back to another round and you attack those facilities again. But in order to penetrate into the depth of these facilities, you will need a little bit of a different constellation, and you will need bunker busters, very heavy bunker busters that are going into the same point dropped by different fighter jets, one after the other, just to penetrate those layers. So right now we are not seeing it because it's a little bit of a more complex operation that, as far as I know, the Israeli Air Force, they're probably leaving it a little bit toward the later point of this
Royce,
operation.
let me ask you on that point though.
Sure.
What do you think that the Americans could get involved? Clearly, from analysis I was reading, my understanding is that the Americans would need to get more involved to provide or upscale, if you like, Israel's capabilities in terms of these bunker buster type bombs. Is that right, or what's your assessment?
Yeah, it's fair. First of all, they don't need to get involved at this point. We are still not, as I said, in the point of pulling out B-52 or mother of all bombs or anything like that. I do not think that the United States will be involved, Peter. I really don't believe so. I'm still somehow, and it will gonna sound crazy to you, I still think that this gonna be ending up with an agreement of some sort between the United States and Iran, even though we're seeing a completely different reality on the ground right now. So I don't think the United States will get involved. I think this is just a means of pressure, and I think you will see a deal being signed without the U.S. needing to be involved. Right now, the U.S. strongest card in front of the Iranian regime is you better sign the deal or we will let Israel keep doing what it's doing. And it's sort of using Israel, and not in a malicious way, but sort of using Israel as the dog that you hold on the leash, and you're threatening to take off the leash if they will refuse to sign the deal. So I think this is sort of the realpolitik that we're seeing right now.
So just one point, Pure. There is warnings that after the ballistic missile that was thrown from the Houthis, there is also warning above Iraq from cruise missiles and not cruise, but like missiles and drones going through Iraq into Israeli territory. So it seems that some sort of retaliation is ongoing. Still not enough information to qualify what it is and the impact of that attack.
I see we've got Mark requesting. I'm quite keen to hear from Mark, nuclear expert. Azim, I see you've got your hand raised as well. Did you want to jump in?
Yeah, real quick. I mean, regarding your question, whether the U.S. will be involved, that is an Iranian decision right now. Iran can show up on Sunday. President Trump was very clear that we're still open to talking, obviously under very different terms at this point. But obviously, from a technical perspective, Israel will need American assets and American expertise to hit those deeply buried nuclear facilities that are deep in the mountains that requires B-2 and 30,000-pound bombs. However, the Iranian regime has the option today to open up these facilities to inspectors. And what Iran gets out of that? Well, this 2-week campaign, this very painful 2-week campaign, will become a few-day campaign. And the regime may survive at the end of the day. We have to remember, and I'll wrap up with this, the Iranian regime for half a century has traded prosperity, personal safety, democracy. They forced this trade on the Iranian people in exchange for protecting the people from this make-believe monster that's Israel and the United States. Now they are miserably failing in delivering on that promise, and the Iranian people protesting today and asking their government to retaliate, they will soon ask their government to, they're soon going to ask for a new government because there's no retaliation coming, not a meaningful one at least.
So, Cliff, you had a question?
Yes, well, I just wanted to add something. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw Mike Johnson's, the Speaker of the House, comment. Basically, given the president and Israel the legitimacy of the Congress to take actions. That's how I understood it. I could be wrong, but that's how I interpreted his message. So technically, if the president wants to get involved now, he has the backing of the Congress apparently. So I completely understand. We need the GBU 57s and heavy ammunition to destroy the targets, but it seems like so far the Israelis are doing fabulous. At first, there were a lot of doubts about the air refueling capabilities and stuff. The Israelis apparently they have Boeing 707s that they have modified somehow, and they're using it to refuel their jets in the air, probably above Iraqi and Syrian air. So I see where the bombardment is needed, which I believe at some point is going to come soon. If the Yemenis and the militias will continue targeting Israel at the way and the rate they're doing now, I could see Israel jumping. I could see the United States jumping into the scene very, very soon. That's what I just wanted to add.
Thanks, Cliff. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to tell, I think, exactly what's going through Trump's head. Keep in mind that this is the chap who said he would end all the wars, and, well, we're now in a major potential one. So, yeah, it's difficult to tell, I think, exactly what he's planning. Abraham Accords was his crowning achievement of foreign policy in his first term. So, you know, if they can deal a decisive blow to the Islamic Republic, which sort of, alleviates the fears of the Arab states and such, then it may be a success. But at the moment, it's, you know, but it's still not sure to me, at least, what the Iranians can do or are willing to do. And Mark, I sort of wanted to come to you really because of your nuclear expertise. What exactly are we seeing from Israel strikes? What have they hit? How significant is this in terms of setbacks for the Iranians to their nuclear program, but also their nuclear capabilities from an energy provision, let alone, you know, weaponry and stuff?
Hey, I want to apologize in advance. I'm exiting the airport, but I'll try to be quick here. I have not yet seen confirmed reports of damage. And by the way, I just want to say, anyone can DM me. If anybody sees a report they want to check on the veracity of or the plausibility of, or even just inform me of something they think I've missed, please send it to my DMs. I promise I'll see it, and I appreciate all the help. Anyway, so far what we've seen from IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, is they said they're watching. There's been no leaks. There's been no radiation. But IAEA is often not in a position to say much more than we want everybody to stop attacking nuclear facilities. Don't do it. It can be dangerous. So it kind of falls to others to sort out what the potential harm is. In this case, I have not seen anything yet from official sources, and I just got off a plane saying there's been damage that could lead to radiation leakage. But I want to clarify that Natanz is not a nuclear reactor facility. I think there's been a lot of misinformation over the night with people calling it a reactor, and then some people then saying that that means that reactors in Iran have been hit. This is not the case.
Right, sorry about the background
If I
noise
might just jump in quickly for some news, and we'll see if we'll share it here live during the space. But according to Fars news agency, the Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei will address the nation in a couple of minutes. So that's something to be on the lookout, and we'll try to share the highlights of that once that happens to see and what his response is and how people are, I mean, both countries are in a state of war, but Iran doesn't even acknowledge the existence of the state of Israel. So it'd be interesting.
Cyprep, do you think it will be pre-recorded or will it be live?
That's an interesting question. Actually, interestingly enough, and I'll share it. Again, obviously the Supreme Leader is not in this area, but it does look like that there was earlier air defense activity near the Supreme Leader's residence in Tehran. Obviously, the Supreme Leader is not there. But that's something that I wouldn't be surprised if this was pre-recorded or he is in a very secure bunker.
Well, keep in mind also that the guy is 85, so his health is not exactly ideal for these sorts of situations.
Yeah,
I can't see him being ferried around or making harried statements at that time. So I think it's going to be pre-recorded. But how long and what he chooses to focus on, I think, is as critical as how it's done. You know. But yeah, Hazim, you wanted to jump in on that point?
I mean, you're absolutely right. It's definitely going to be pre-recorded. I don't think they'll risk having him exposed in any shape, way, or form, including with signal intelligence. I'm really eager to see what he's going to say about the colossal failure of his military systems. Again, we have to remind everybody that, according to the IDF at least, not a single surface-to-air missile was launched against at this point more than 400 sorties by the Israeli Air Force. This is failure. I mean, I guarantee you, the Iranian regime did not just decide not to protect its skies. So we'll see what he's going to say, but I think, in my opinion, or my hope at least, that he will start making the case for showing up on Sunday to the negotiations.
Yeah, just getting some news here.
Go ahead,
Thanks, Steph. Yeah, it's the Home Front Command going to basically stay near protected areas. That's what's coming from Channel 13 in Israel. So there is still a fair amount of fear about what the Iranians plan to do. I personally do think that there's going to be more coming tonight. The Iranians tend to do more in the night. Also, how many of these major escalations have we seen occurring on a Friday or a Saturday? It's insane. It's been almost every time, I think, in the Middle East at this point. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do choose to do something. Sort of, Khaname gives his pre-recorded address and then they start launching. Well, actually, Steph, I'll put that to you as a question. What could the Israelis do? Realistically, missiles and mirages. What options do they have left?
Yeah, I mean, that's really it. I mean, the only thing is the ballistic missiles. Again, here's the problem that Iran has: is that although they have the largest ballistic missile program in the Middle East, not all the ballistic missiles that Iran has in their arsenal can reach Israel. Right? If this was an attack against, let's say, U.S. military bases across the Middle East, oh, absolutely. Right, because you have Qatar, UAE, et cetera. Yeah. Those a lot of those, the vast majority of those short-range ballistic missiles within the arsenal of Iran can reach those targets. Right. The thing about Israel is they have to use their medium-range ballistic missiles. So Israel doesn't have to be worried about a lot of these other areas, and I think that's why they're doing a lot of these targeted strikes. I mean, we've seen a concentrated of the strikes in Tabriz, Kermanshah. This is kind of in the western portion, and they're probably targeting those missile systems that can reach into Israel. And so that's something really important to highlight. And so, but Iran can still do it. If you look historically, at all the Iranian things, and when they launch, I mean, it takes them a couple of days to do it. That's why we're probably seeing the drone launches. But I think this is why Israel has really targeted the command and control and the leadership of these organizations, because they want to cause mass confusion and chaos within the IRGC ranks, and that would cause more of a delay for an Iranian response, enabling Israel, since they basically have, for all intents and purposes, air superiority over Iran already, enable them to continue to conduct strikes against these assets, right? I think that's the goal of the Israelis. It was a decapitation strike, cause mass confusion within the ranks, and then leverage that confusion to then start striking more hardened structures and support networks, logistics, bases, et cetera, to really degrade those abilities.
So Steph, I mean, I see we've got Colonel Jeff on stage. I want to go to him. But, I would say it's quite interesting, really. They have been quite disciplined and only focusing on the military arm, right? There's no political arm, and we know the relationship of how the two work together, especially in a place like the Islamic Republic. So very much about the IRGC are a fact, not the political sort of network and such. But Jeff, what's your opinion of what you've been seeing today and now, and what could happen even as early as tonight or over the weekend?
Yeah, hey, thanks for bringing me up. So I think the lesson learned here is if you're buying Western military gear, you can project power pretty far, and if you are buying Russian gear, you're in a lot of trouble. It's another nation, right? Because we've kind of learned from Ukraine that Russian stuff wasn't really up to snuff. It was still effective to a degree. Let's not say it was completely ineffective, but their export variants, things that they're giving out to other nations, were woefully inadequate. I don't think that's going too far beyond the bounds, right, or overly dramatic. And when you have 400 sorties flying over your nation and you didn't down one airplane, that's a big deal. I do have a question. I don't know necessarily how the supreme leaders tie to the military is, right? So and I don't know if he would be a target of an assassination if he's not like somehow tied to the military, because you can't, as much as I understand Israel might want to do that, right? I don't think that they dabble into, you know, laws of armed conflict violations and things
He
like
is,
that. So
Jeff. He is the
okay,
leader. It's the same way.
okay,
The
so
same way Nasrallah was the leader of the military, but the
okay,
religious
okay,
figure.
perfect.
It's
Then
the
then
same
that
thing
answers
as
that question.
Khamenei.
Yeah, I didn't know. Okay, thanks.
So we've got some interesting information, although to me it doesn't come as too much of a surprise, much like the Ukrainians giving backstory to the US administration, I think at least before Trump took over, about Operation Spiderweb. Netanyahu gave, you know, prior warning or whatever information to the US about the strikes. Netanyahu said that Israel coordinated with the US ahead of its attack on Iran, quote unquote. We told them in advance, they knew about the strike. What they will do now, I leave it to President Trump. He makes his own decisions. I will not speak for him. He speaks very persuasively and very firmly and said Iran should not have nuclear weapons. They should not have enrichment capabilities. That comes from a CNN article and demonstrates, I think, that the you know, perceived bad relationship between Trump and Netanyahu was actually all nonsense. So I don't know. I mean, I still think there was some disagreement here and there, but it's speculation. So anyway, that's the latest bit of information on the political front. Voice, go for it.
Hey, Peter. So we just got, I just got an alert to my phone from the Homefront Command Center. And they are basically asking people in certain areas. So me living close to the northern border, they asked us to be next to a bombing shelter because there is the suspicion that there will be some sort of an attack during Khamenei's speech. So right now, yeah, this is the situation on the ground. So in case there will be anything, I will try to open my mic. But if not, then you will know that I'm running
just
for
to
shelter.
confirm, you're saying you did get indications that an attack is originating from Iran against Israel. That was the alert that was sent. Just to confirm.
Yes, they are sending it individually according to the area that you live. So they trace your phone, they know in which area you live, and then you're getting this warnings. And the alert said that it's because of the fear of an imminent attack.
Yeah, because
from,
there was
Iran.
we have images, and actually we had the speaker yesterday, so I don't know if we can get him back on to the Mario teams. Stephen Nabil. He said he tweeted a video, and you're seeing moments ago, seen over Iraqi cities in the western part, headed towards Jordan, and then obviously Israel. And this looks some contrails, could be cruise missiles, could be ballistic missiles. So that could be associated voice to what you were alluding to. But from the videos, it doesn't look like a large quantity. But we don't know how.
I just want to stick on this though, Steph, for a second. Voice, like, so you're there, so. If I can ask, like, sort of, how do you feel being on the ground? Like, do you feel that the Iron Dome is well equipped to deal with any potential? I mean, it did remarkably well the first time round, but I feel like the Iranians are going to upscale it even more this time. So, like, personally for you, how do you feel being in the situation? If that makes sense.
Well, somehow at the same time. I'm getting by jets in the air and stuff like that. And the Iron Dome is less what makes me feel secure. It's more like the Arrow 2, the Arrow 3, and also new laser system of ELTA.
Don't forget David Sling.
I think we lost voice. Am I the one who can't hear her?
Hear me?
Yeah, I think.
There you are, voice. There you are. Now we can hear you.
Sorry, guys. I hope you can hear me now. Well, right?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm saying that these systems, because they intercept the missiles way outside the atmosphere and also mostly far away from the Israeli airspace, I feel more secure knowing that these are deployed in the exact place. I think the Iranian mindset or the IRGC mindset is to launch an attack because they believe maybe that most of our Air Force pilots are too busy with Gaza or also with what's happening in Iran right now, and maybe it will be a good time to launch some sort of an attack. But they probably learned some lessons from what happened last time when they tried to launch cruise missiles, drones, and ballistic missiles all at the same time, so some arrived earlier, some arrived a little bit later, and they thought that this is how they're going to challenge the air defense system. So that's not the case. That's not how they can challenge it. I feel safe, Piotr, living in Israel in time like this, but I'm also very about how, because a war with Iran is not like a war with Gaza. This is something completely different, and the longer it will take, the dangerous it will become for all sides, by the way.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I think it's just very interesting to share with listeners. Obviously, you're covering this professionally, but you are there on the ground. Your personal security is another element. So appreciate that. But Hazem, did you want to jump in and then we'll go to you, Jeff?
Yeah, real quick on retaliation. The key point when it comes to retaliation, it needs to be proportional. And Iran has nothing remotely proportional to what has been done over the past few hours and continues to be done. There's another aspect that, for one, Iran tried to retaliate already with 200 drones, all were shut down. Obviously, the response from Iranian arms and proxies, such as the Houthis, well, for Hezbollah, it was a very bashful 2 drones attempt, and Hezbollah would not want the Lebanese army to get involved at this point, and they will get involved if Hezbollah tries to do more than what they've done already. For the Houthis, they're looking at the situation, they're saying, well, we don't have any capabilities, and we really do not feel like we should be dragged into this conflict with a very active air campaign that can be very easily expanded into Yemen. Also, for the Iranian regime, as you mentioned very correctly, they have limited amount of missiles to use to reach Israel. And the failure, now we're having this conversation, there's the illusion of the capability to respond by the Iranians. If they start sending ballistic missiles and these missiles get shut down in totality, then even that illusion of capability will be gone and they will be left with absolutely nothing. So it's not an easy decision for the Iranians to take this risk of launching a failed
just to be more
retaliation.
specific on that, right? I think it's the Iranians lost a major.
Piotr, can I just read? Just quickly, sorry, if I may. I think this was shared in Khamenei's Telegram channel. I'm just going to read it out just from the address, and then Hazem, you can go. Nothing, Burger. The Supreme Leader of the Revolution, in a televised message to the Iranian nation, said, quote, "The armed forces will make the scoundrel Zionist regime miserable." Ayatollah Khamenei addressed the great Iranian nation in a televised message tonight. The armed forces will act with force and impoverish the scoundrel Zionist regime. The Zionist regime will not escape this crime unscathed. The Iranian people can be assured that this area will not be neglected. The details of the message will be published in a few minutes, so I might jump in again.
Okay, well, in the meantime, we've got a couple of hands, but I did want to make one quick point to Hazem's contribution, which is that, think about it, right? The Iranians lost one of their biggest, sort of assets or tools or whatever you can argue, which was the plausible deniability thing. By striking Israel directly or attempting to, that's completely removed it. And the more, obviously, missiles you use, the less you've got to use in the future. Your stockpiles go down. And right now, Iran's relations with its key strategic allies are, in a difficult situation. The Russians are completely overwhelmed in Ukraine. You can argue they're doing well in line of contact, but the Ukrainians keep, entering their own airspace. When someone was saying, well, the Russians will send their air force down to help the Iranians out and blah, blah, blah. Really? So the air force they haven't been using to protect their own airspace over Russia against Ukrainian drones? I think not. So this the geopolitical expansion of this, I just don't see being more than the Iranians on their own and the Houthis. That's sort of really where my mind's at.
You're absolutely right. Nobody's willing to die on Iran's hill today. They are alone and they are afraid, for sure.
Yeah. But Voice, Jeff, you guys got your hands up. Maybe Voice, we want to go back to you.
No, Jeff was before me. I will explain something about the Iranian capabilities in a moment. Jeff can go ahead.
Okay, I was trying to be ladies first, but go for it, Jeff.
You're such a gentleman. No, what I wanted to point out was I think earlier you said it was interesting what they picked for targets, and I would tell you that if you're going to use surprise, the targets don't surprise me at all. As a matter of fact, they'd be the targets that I'd want to use. And the reason I say that is if you're going to use surprise, you want to try and take out all the targets that are going to move quickly, right? And any permanent or hard is still going to be there tomorrow. But generals and leadership, as soon as the targets, as soon as they know the attack's coming, so this kind of makes sense to me, right? It also tells me that Israel's in this for the long haul. This isn't just a one strike and we're going to sit down. That they're going to keep coming.
So let me go to Voice just quickly, just to see if there's any updates, because with this message going in, any updates from the home front, anything like that, indicating to take shelter, incoming missiles? Because I mean, at this point, I'm now assuming they're either one-way attack UAVs but based on the videos, they look more like cruise missiles. I would assume the ballistic missiles were already have reached target. What are you seeing, Voice?
Well, look, first of all, we need to remember that if the Iranian regime was indeed caught by surprise, that in order to launch these missiles, you also need fuel, a special fuel for these missiles. And earlier today, on the first wave of attacks, the IAF was bombing also in Tabriz, the rocket fuel depots that were there as well. So it might be one of the reasons, at least, why we see this delay. Now, let's sort it out for a second. An Iranian suicide drone travels around 200 kilometers per hour, which means the distance to Israel, which is roughly 2,000 kilometers, it would take them around 10 hours to ETA, so to estimated arrival time to Israel. A cruise missile travels around 800 kilometers per hour, so it means it will take it about a little bit over 2 hours. A ballistic missiles, depending on the type, it travels at Mach 4 or Mach 5, which means that this is the fastest arrival time to Israel, which is about 12 minutes. Now, if you probably remember in the previous attack on Israel, the first one, Iran launched everything at once, as I mentioned earlier. So they tried to overwhelm and confuse the air defense system. So that didn't really work because some arrived early, some arrived later. And that's exactly what explains what we saw today. Earlier today, we saw a report about Iranian drones that are approaching Israel, and they were all intercepted. Had those drones reached Israel and exploded, which means they reached their destination successfully, they likely would have waited about 7 hours and 40 minutes and then launched the cruise missiles. And then shortly after, they would have launched the ballistic missiles. But I think because the swarm of drones have failed and it didn't really hit the target, this is the reason why they haven't launched the ballistic missiles and the cruise missiles yet. And it might have to do with the chain of command there being damaged, but I think this is the reason why we're not seeing any ballistic missiles at this point.
Interesting. There's a bit of an information here that Israel will launch against Iranian oil refineries and natural gas sites on the Persian Gulf if the Iranians decide to target Israeli population centers during their own retaliation, according to Channel 12 Israeli News. So we're going to see a tit for tat sort of thing here, but I would be quite surprised if the Iranians just go straight after population centers and not try to be, I don't know, but they often talk about proportionality in their responses in international law when they're making communications at the UN. So if the Iranians are going to target population centers just indiscriminately, then yeah, that would be quite a shift, I think. I don't know if people agree with me on that one, but Sitrep, what's your take on that?
Yeah, Piotr, that's actually something I said is, like, right now, all the strikes we've seen does not indicate regime change. One of the areas that maybe might indicate that is strikes at the Iranian oil and natural gas production. not necessarily just regime, but definitely trying to cause an economic collapse within the Islamic Republic, and then that inherently the side effect is in the anticipation or hope that then doesn't a regime change. But a lot of the strikes at the beginning of this was shock and awe from a military perspective, which I think Israel has accomplished. Now, if they're going to more expansive and stuff like that, now we're having a serious conversation about the Islamic Republic's ability to kind of weather this, and does this then force Iran to respond for, let's say, closing the Straits of Hormuz, and the mentality of, well, we can't ship our oil, nobody can, right? And an attempt with that I could see that a scenario like that where the Iranians might put that in their calculations as a potential response if a lot of their oil and natural gas infrastructure is destroyed. And then that necessarily would probably require the U.S. to intervene directly. I know that kind of goes. So, go ahead, Piotr.
No, I mean, just to add to that, right? Think about, well, for people listening, think about this. Iran is an integral part to Russian drone production and supply chains. They are an integral part of China's oil and other energy security elements. The Iranian regime going down is so bad for, if you want to call it, the autocratic axis, right? The Russians, the Chinese, the North Koreans, the Iranians are often lumped together by Western media and analysts as sort of part of the anti-West, whatever bloc. So if the Iranians really do see a systemic breakdown, that's going to have absolute domino effect on the Russians, without question. Whether or not it means sort of Putin suddenly kicked out of the Kremlin is a different matter, but it's going to harm the Russians' sustainability in terms of their own war efforts in Ukraine. China's a little bit more nuanced, obviously, and North Korea, not too sure about that, not that it matters as much, but it's got, farther-reaching implications than just the Middle East. At least strategically speaking, right? I think it's going to be fascinating to see how other countries react to that in the coming days or even hours, right? Hazem, go for it.
Yeah, I just want to go back really quick to what Noya mentioned, and she gave an amazing breakdown of the capabilities, retaliation capabilities of the Iranian regime. But we need to ask ourselves, do we really know if they have any ballistic missiles that are fueled and warheaded and ready to go? I'm not sure. What we know, most of what we know about these capabilities are exaggerated capabilities released by the Iranian regime and aerial photos that do not tell the full story. The satellite photos will show you a launcher, may show you a missile on top of that launcher, but it's very unclear if that missile is ready, if it's fueled, if it's connected to the launch systems. So it's very interesting to see if they have any capabilities left, especially after launching what we believe to be all of their systems last year. So I don't think they can retaliate at this point. The only thing they can do is get with the program and show up on Sunday. I'll keep repeating that all day. That is the only lifeline left to the Iranian regime. It's a tough pill to swallow, but they better get swallowing.
And actually, if I may just jump in, this was satellite imagery obtained by Chris Biggers. He said that it was acquired at 07:25 Zulu time on 13 June, and it suggests that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps naval base west of Bostanu was targeted by Israeli airstrikes. So they have, I guess, the Israelis are anticipating to try to prevent even Iran from having the ability to try to shut the Straits of Hormuz, and have also targeted IRGC naval assets in the along the Persian Gulf. So interesting development. Voice, I see your hand up.
Yeah, regarding to what you and Piotr were talking about, the regime change, I think it will help a lot for you guys and the listeners to know that there is a one very obvious indicator to when you want to do a regime change. In Israel target banks, we also have targets that are meant to bring down any suppression tool of the regime to suppress stuff like demonstrations or coup or something like that. So I'm talking about depots of the Iranian police, all sorts of vehicles, armed vehicles, stuff that are mostly being used by police officers of the regime. Once you're going to see those being under attack, this is when you know, okay, the target is indeed to at least spark a regime change. And right now, this is not what we're seeing. We don't see any of these targets being attacked, at least not for now. So I think that would be the best indicators for you guys and for anybody who is listening and trying to understand what is going on. As long as these targets are untouched, this is obviously not the objective of those who are committing the attack.
Yeah, I think it's sort of right voice, indirectly incentivizing the Iranian people to do it of their own accord, right? The thing that Iran does have, which a lot of countries don't when you're talking about the day after, is, well, take Gaza, for example, right? We don't have a clear idea of who would govern the Strip or Palestine as we do in Iran. You've got the Crown Prince, and we've got a clear sort of diaspora of people who could contribute towards creating a post-Islamic Republic kind of government and leadership and lead to elections and whatever. And that's clear, but sort of how do you get from now to that is sort of the key question. And obviously, Israel doesn't want to be the one to sort of take out the leaders and such, because that's a whole different element to getting the people on the ground to sort of do it for themselves, sort of thing. So I think that's a really crucial point when you're talking about the political direction of things. And Wajid, I know you've joined the panel, and we've had great contributions from you in the past. I was curious what your take is on everything going on at the moment.
I feel like this has been long coming. I've heard people talking about this kind of attack since 2018, and it's been back and forth between Israel and Iran. What I received
Sorry,
information.
do you mind if I be really rude and just interrupt you with some important news? It may
Sure.
influence what you say
Yeah.
next. Thank you, mate. Basically, President Putin, considering I was making comments about Russia just now, has spoken to both, interestingly, President Masoud of Iran and Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, obviously, Russia has a, should we say, complicated relationship with the Israelis. It's not great, but it's not sort of dead. And they've obviously had to navigate each other in, say, Syrian airspace over the years. So I'm very curious to see what he would have said, and also how Russia's thinking about it. Another piece of news is reports indicate Israel has identified preparations in Iran to launch about 100 ballistic missiles. So our sort of guesses of, bigger non-drone type things, i.e. ballistic, do seem to be on point. Going to be interesting to see, if that follows through. We're waiting to verify that from more sources, but that's sort of some speculative information for you. But Wajid, thanks for being.
It will take them 12 minutes to get here. 12 minutes.
I've had people from my own sources in the Saudi military who told me that from insider sources that didn't want to identify themselves, that there was some assistance from the Saudi airspace to the Israeli government to assist with the attack in Iran. So that was information that was passed to me by someone that was in the Saudi Air Force, and it's basically gives us a good idea that the Gulf countries, at least, they're all on board with this attack, and they all had some sort of idea of this attack happening beforehand, as well as the United States.
Sorry, was you?
Yeah, that's not accurate. 1 second, Wajid, just one thing. They were involved, but they were involved in the interceptions, not in the attacks in Iran, as far as I know. Just wanted to add that.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned in the Saudi airspace itself. So they were involved, but they didn't do direct attack on Iran soil. That's correct. What I was trying to say is basically this is a sign that Gulf countries are celebrating. They've been struggling with the attacks from the Houthis for a minute. That is a direct link from Iran. And they've been struggling also with Lebanon for a while, because Lebanon is also a state that Saudi Arabia has been trying to put its own influence on for a long time. So from what I've seen, only members of the Brotherhood and religious political movements have been the one that have been calling for action against Israel. So there is some sort of divide. I think Russia is too busy. Russia is too busy, and it's only going to act like a mediator. In fact, I think Russia has a lot of its citizens in Israel, so I don't know if Russia has any interest of wanting any war in this situation.
Well, gee,
They're also
they don't have the capacity. I don't think it's about
they're too
aptitude
busy with.
or appetite. It's about capability, and I just don't think the Russians have the bandwidth. They can barely defend their own bloody airspace. You know what I mean?
That's why the only country that said we'll step up is North Korea. Not Russia didn't say they're going to step up. North Korea said that they're going to help Iran. So what's clear to me is Iran is on their own, and North Korea was helping Russia and Ukraine. So I feel like the last country that they could fall on is North Korea, and they would have to pay out of their own pocket for that, I believe. So, from my own opinion,
yeah, I mean,
Iran
look, from the
is
North Korean side in Kursk in Russia, it was very well, inconsistent, shall we say. They denied it for months, and then eventually when you had piles of North Korean bodies being emerged, and then also when the Russians retook Kursk, or much of Kursk, it was finally revealed that they did. I do wonder how much the North Koreans would get involved, as much of their industrial capacity is already supporting the Russians. And then obviously there's the distance proximity thing. It's quite easy for North Korea to deliver to Russia because it's just over the Russian airspace. But here you've got to go through other countries, and it's a bit of a more complicated, delivery path. So
I
I'm
think
not
what
expecting North Korea to be much use to this.
Iran's biggest mistake is that they started too many war fronts, and they wanted to support too many of their uh, proxy groups without wanting to take any responsibilities for it. And they couldn't look forward to seeing that one day that all their proxies group could be dismantled and they would be the last person standing, and that's where we're left at, checkmate. So I think Iran is going to be looking at the end of its life here pretty soon, and maybe for a new regime. At least that's what Arab Gulf countries are hoping for.
Yeah. Interesting, though, the reports earlier saying that they're going to condemn the events, actions by Israel. So,
They say that
I
in
haven't
public
seen
all
much
the time.
diplomatic conversation. What have you seen?
Piotr, they've been having very close relationship with Israel behind closed doors. They always say that we condemn the actions of Israel, but then behind closed door they're having cheers and they're drinking glasses of champagne. So like let's be
Non-alcoholic champagne. Non-alcoholic champagne.
non-alcoholic
It's
champagne.
rose
That's
water
right.
when the Formula One's in town, isn't it? But Voice, you wanted to jump in, or James? I saw your hand up as well. You got any news?
Nothing on my end. Front, yeah.
So just can you, Voice, maybe do a summary again for us? So sort of the Israelis were launching a subsequent round of strikes on certain targets, right? How long did that last? What was the fallout from that in the past, hour and a half?
Oh my God, you really tackle me. It's hard to get that from from the back of my head here. But yeah, there were 2 waves of attacks. About 200 Israeli fighter jets were participating in each and every one of them. Of course, the first one was hitting the chain of command, which had the entire Air Force leadership meeting in one place. This is something that has to do with the Mossad. There was a lot of intelligence work happening on the ground to get them all to be in the same room. And then to conduct this target. Then you had, of course, a lot of attacks on you had the Iranian Tehran International Airport, you had Natanz, you had Perchin, You had I really cannot pull them out of my head, Piotr. I need to look at what got hit.
It's all right.
But
Don't worry. I know I put you on the spot there. It was more just
you-
generally what
yeah.
we've seen, which was 2 rounds, and now we're waiting effectively for the Iranians to respond. Is that sort of the stick
Yeah,
left, if that makes-
we're waiting for them to respond, and we are you see that we are prepared for it. This is a little bit less talked about, but also the Israeli Air Force is operating on the Iraqi-Syria border also to prevent from the Iraqi Shia militias to somehow participate, because like James was mentioning earlier, Hezbollah is off the menu at this point, so they're not going to participate, at least not according to what it looks like. So the IAF is also operating there. Of course, there are extra batteries of David Sling, Arrow 1, Arrow 3 air defense system, and also there are tailored warning of the home front command as well that is also alerting regarding the areas of living. And we constantly get reports about launches of drones, couple of here, couple of there, that are approaching Israel, but none of them really penetrated the Israeli airspace. So this is why it's not big headlines with everything that is happening right now. And I think, this is what is happening right now, basically. A little bit of nuclear component facilities, ballistic missiles, launchers. And I think the most interesting thing is that in the initial wave, and I think this is what people should really focus on right now, the Mossad was able to establish for months now launching pads from trucks within Iran, that those drones, those Israeli drones, were actually attacking the air defense systems first before we even saw the big air campaign. And I think this is what's the most interesting part in this entire action. It's not just the Air Force, it's what the Mossad have managed to establish on the ground as well.
True, indeed. I think it goes back to what I was saying about the Ukrainians and the Israelis sort of, I don't know if they're directly learning from each other, so to speak, but it's,
They
clearly
do.
the
They do.
intelligence. Yeah, they do. Yeah, I thought so. But no, I mean, one of your theme is sort of on the menu. I mean, Iran's reeling yet again, and the Israelis are largely, feasting there. They're eating away at assets that the Islamic Republic have or had, and well, they just don't. If they're going to shoot a bunch of ballistic missiles, it seems a little bit underwhelming. Obviously, trying to jinx anything, but considering
It's
what they
only enough
claim
that
to do,
fuel
right?
go through. Only fuel can come
Yeah.
through and make really big damage if they hit our targets.
Absolutely. No, I know. I'm not trying to play that down. It's just, for all the talk that they make all the time, rhetoric. It's underwhelming in the face of things. But James, you had your hand up. I'm sure you want to make some points.
Yeah, I want to make a point about the region. So right now, in the situation we are in and the region, the escalations around the region, Iran's position is they want to be the strongest person north of in the North Levant. That's their position. You have Saudi Arabia, who's getting more and more control in the peninsula and in North Africa, and now you need Iran needed to be positioned as the strong a strong person in the northern part of the Levant. The issue that happened is that when the opportunity was at its best, let's say military-wise, I'm not saying it's a good thing, I'm saying military-wise, October 7th, the Promise 1 attack, the Promise 2 attack, when those attacks happened, we didn't see a mobilization of the entire axis around the attack. And today, that's what's happening to Iran. Iran is on its own because of military and strategical mistakes that they did. When you attack and you want to go attack an enemy, that a person you consider an enemy that's much stronger than you, and you have all those capabilities, you have the ability to go by foot from the north and from groups that are on the territory itself, so bordering the territory. You can throw rockets, you can throw ballistic missiles from afar in order to overwhelm the capability of the defenses of the enemy, and then shoot bigger rockets, bigger ballistic missiles into the territory. You could have overwhelmed the situation enough in order to reach this position. What we've discovered, what we've found out, is that it's a paper tiger. Like the entire axis in itself have failed. It crumbled every time a decision was taken to attack a certain group from that axis, the same thing happened. Within the first 48 hours to 72 hours, the tier one leadership is gone.
So, James, we've got a bit of breaking news, if you don't mind me jumping in, mate. Thanks, bro. Trump has said, let me see here, maybe blowing stuff up will help get a deal. Okay, that's always his choice of words. Trump says Israel's strikes on Iran might actually boost chances for a nuclear agreement. I don't think so, quote. Maybe the opposite. Maybe now they will negotiate seriously. He still believes a deal is possible. They were close. They should have done it. Maybe now it will happen. Meanwhile, Israel admits the bombing won't fully stop Iran's nukes, but hopes it sets the stage for a US-led deal. So strike first, negotiate later.
I genuinely don't want a deal happen. I genuinely don't want a deal to happen. No, like happen. No one from the Gulf countries want a deal to happen.
Yes, everyone wants to, actually everyone wants the deal to happen. Like everyone wants to reach a position where Iran is abiding by a certain set of understanding and rules that they work on. But what happened is that no one could control what Iran was going to do. That's what happened before. With the damage that's being imposed and the destruction of all its militias forces in the region, and all the effort, all of the IRGC external wings and the IRGC internal wings, and the military apparatus inside of Iran, it puts Iran in a position where they have no choice. There won't be boots on the ground, Iraq 2.2 and Afghanistan 2.2, where Israelis or even American or French or UK people are controlling the land inside of Iran. Iran will get out of this throughout the deal. There is no possibility. The question is, how much destruction will they accept to take until they reach a deal? Are they
James, can I just jump in with something from the IDF? This is a statement from the IDF. The IDF attacked a nuclear site in the Isfahan region. At this moment, Air Force fighter jets have completed an attack on the Iranian regime nuclear site in the Isfahan area under precise intelligence guidance from the intelligence branch. This site is undergoing a process of reconversion of enriched uranium. This is the next stage after Iranian enrichment and the process of producing a nuclear weapon. The attack destroyed a structure for producing metallic uranium, infrastructure for converting enriched uranium laboratories, and other infrastructure. This is directly from the IDF. So, Mark, translate that to normal term. What does this mean?
Wow. Okay, well, first of all, Iran does not use a civilian nuclear reactor that uses metallic uranium. I'm kind of shocked they said that. There are ways to use metal uranium in reactors, but I'm trying to think, I don't think there's a single metal uranium fueled reactor in the world for civilian purposes. So this would have been a facility. Wait, you're saying that the Iranians said that?
The IDF, Mark.
Yeah, the IDF. Sorry, the IDF.
Sorry, IDF. No worries. Sorry, I just got out of street level and something went by. Right. So, right. If they're claiming that this was a metal uranium fabrication facility, and deconversion facility, then they're directly saying that this was part of a nuclear weapons program for all practical purposes. So yeah, the steps of making energy out of uranium in most civilian reactors in the world, you get the uranium out of the rock, you turn it into yellow cake in a uranium mill. That's the yellow powder that people have seen pictures of. You take that product, drop hydrofluoric acid on it, it turns into the gas form, uranium hexafluoride. That stuff gets spun up in the centrifuges that were apparently attacked at Natanz site, and then that gives you both depleted uranium gas and enriched uranium gas. You take the uranium gas of either kind, I guess the enriched gas, and then you need to return that into a solid state. In almost everywhere in the world, that gets turned to uranium dioxide, UO2. That's the stuff you press into fuel pellets and put into a civilian nuclear reactor. Or I guess if you wanted to, you could use it to fuel a plutonium production reactor, but that's not the normal process that I've heard of. So anyway, what the IDF is saying is that they're hitting things that were basically guaranteed to be part of a nuclear weapons program if they were being used that way at all, because there would not have been a justifiable purpose of a metallic uranium fabrication location for any known part of the Iranian civilian program.
Thank you, Mark. So I did want to give an opportunity to just ask, because I saw Matt was here. And Matt, we've had you in a lot of spaces. I know I discussed with you the last time when we were doing the Operation Spiderweb, the Ukrainians laying it out, and kind of that operation. And now what we saw, and I would love your take on this, a very extensive air and special forces and intelligence operations inside of Iran. Kind of the historical example that I'm thinking of that is probably the closest is probably the 6-Day War, kind of the surprise that the Israeli managed to achieve and really decimate the Arab armies back then. And we're seeing kind of like a similar story in Iran, where basically it looks like Israel basically has complete permission to operate it over Iranian airspace and almost air superiority, if not dominance. But I'd love your military take and analysis and your reaction into this situation.
I've also got a question to add to you for you, Matt, which is, can the Iranians use a hypersonic? Do they have that capability? Do they have them or not?
Before going to Matt, there's breaking news of an imminent attack happening on central Israel, coming from Israeli media and from other medias around the area. So, but mainly from Israeli media. Thank you.
So you have to excuse me if it sounds a little bit windy where I'm at. I'm actually out for a walk when I saw that you guys invited me, but I'm doing my best. So as far as that immediate attack, what I heard literally right before I came in here was that the warning that was taking place was that Iran was preparing to launch 100 ballistic missiles at Israel. And so it was essentially like a preemptive, like almost like a warning order, like, hey guys, stay near a freaking bunker, because the flight time on those things is about 10 minutes in between Iran and Israel, right? So give or take, depends on where they launch it from. But that's from the border. It depends on how deep they end up launching, but 15 minutes max, right, for those things to go out. As far as the level of presence, who is it that asked me an initial question? I'm sorry. Do you mind going back
Matt, that was me. But first, if Peter, I can address that. Every ballistic missile basically is a hypersonic. If you're talking about the hypersonic, what that really matters is the cruise missiles. No, they do not. The Iranians love to say, "Oh, we have hypersonic." It's just a ballistic missile. All ballistic missiles are hypersonic. They just throw that out there like it's a new term that people use, and it drives me crazy. But Matt, my question to you was, we were talking about Operation Spider. I remember you were there, and you're kind of analyzing kind of the huge advancements in Ukrainian intelligence capabilities to do this. And now we're seeing Israel do something much more expansive, not only airstrikes, but special forces intelligence operations, and basically have what looks and appears like air dominance. And the historical example to me is almost like the beginning of the 6-Day War, where Israel managed to get strategic surprise and set the stage for a quick victory. I'm not saying there's going to be a quick victory, but clearly there was a huge strategic surprise. I mean, it kind of highlights the success of Israel, but more importantly, I mean, the complete failures of the Iranian military. But I just like your military analysis and take on this.
Yeah, my take on it is that the Iranian people are really pissed off at the regime. And the reason I'm saying that is because the level of intelligence drives operations, right? This is a huge difference in between Spiderweb versus what we're seeing going on over in Iran. Spiderweb was great. Ukraine's ability to collect that different intelligence, have everything set up. I mean, obviously we saw Mossad doing the same thing over, outside of Tehran, allegedly setting up different drone production locations and whatnot to launch these attacks. But the level of intelligence collection that went into this is huge. Figuring out where all those different aerial defense assets are at, because Iran had been moving them around and making sure that they're able to keep tabs on those. There's not that many Mossad agents over inside of Iran. There's just not. And so what that means is that the people inside of Iran are not very happy. And you gotta picture that some of these locations that they ended up pulling this information from is pretty dang hard to get into, right? Pulling information coming in and out of one of those nuclear sites. Let's take Natanz, for example, what they were doing in there, the specific types of intelligence that they're getting off that. You don't get that off of a satellite. You can assume that, you can figure it out, but you start getting multiple sources of intel that are coming out of that location in order to figure that out, and specifically, underground where all that's going to be. Now, is there other things like GPR and, sure, right? But you want to get that different confirmation. So to me, the level of sophistication that went into this on the intelligence side is what really drove this operation and made it so dang successful, so that those guys are being dominated. Even with the initial responses, it looked like Iran came back almost immediately, within the first 2 hours, and tried to launch ballistic missiles at Israel from out of the northwest, pulling them out of some of those mountainsides. And I saw a video, I lost it. I wish I could find it. Very clear of them trying to move some of the ballistic missiles out, and an airstrike immediately plugged that hole. So that type of intel, that type of information is very hard to get a hold of. And that goes to show, you're not going to get that level of intel over inside Russia per se. Your ass is going to get balled up. Over inside of Iran, allegedly it's really easy to get a hold of because of the scale of operation. I don't think Israel's out of the woods yet either. I think Iran is currently licking their wounds, trying to reestablish lines of communication. And as soon as they get all that established, they're going to attempt to sneak some weapons or attempt to sneak some ballistic missiles over Israel.
So, Matt, just a quick follow-up question though. Were you surprised that Israel, because I think it's important to highlight, we have Israeli drones flying over, for example, we had video of it, of Israeli drones flying over Tabriz. I mean, these aren't stealth drones. Let's make it clear. These are not stealth drones. These are just normal drones like our MQ-9s that get shot down by the Houthis, right? That's why they're there. But they're freely operating over Iran. We have not seen a single image video report of Iranian being able to shoot down any Israeli air assets. The irony is the Houthis are having more success against American drones than the Iranians against Israeli drones. And again, these aren't sophisticated drones. I mean, what does that tell you, and what does that highlight? Was it, maybe the strikes against the because one of the key targets was the command structure of the Iranian Air Defense Unit, the KHADC. Did that have an effect? Maybe was Iranian air defense just more powerful? People talked about it as it was more powerful than it really was. I mean, what does that tell you, Matt?
Yeah, I'm starting to wonder a couple different things as we look at it. Yeah, number one, they did have a very good effective strike when it comes to knocking out those aerial defense systems and all of that being pre-coordinated. It's likely some of the first things that end up getting taken out. But I wouldn't be surprised if Mossad and their drones, being launched, didn't have a huge effect on that, on some of these, I'm not going to get into specific components of what some of these things are, but for them to be able to go over and knock out some of these key components that would shut those systems down and render them inoperable. When we started seeing some of the Iranian fighter jets getting launched, that F-35 isn't necessarily dogfight. It's not really what it's designed for, right? So as those things start to pop up on their radar, they're able to fire freaking, from multiple kilometers away and just start knocking aircraft out of the sky if they absolutely need to. So those F-35s can dominate every single piece of air power that Iran has. So to me, that's what it's at. But the other thing that I look at as well, because I've seen what appeared to be images of ballistic missiles and aerial defense systems that were getting knocked out that didn't seem to be manned. And this is the part that really started to make my head turn a little bit. If they're not getting ready fully to go into operation and they're not being manned, but they're getting struck, is that because people are abandoning their equipment, that they're essentially defecting when the word went down on all of the leadership that was getting knocked out? So still waiting to see.
I want to just quickly jump in. Yes, James, I'm going to go to you. I just want to give a quick.
But I have an answer for you, Saika.
I just want to give a quick misinformation alert. There's a video circling around showing apparently claiming that it's an Israeli pilot that his plane was shot down, took down, and there's a parachute video. That video apparently is from when Turkey shot down the Russian Su-24. That is not from this recent event. I just wanted to highlight that, everybody, because I saw it. People are going to start tagging. That is not from. If there's a report, there has been reports in Iranian Telegram channels indicating an Israeli jet was shot down, and then this video populated. That video appears to be from when Russia lost its Sukhoi 24, not related to the current event. Sorry, James.
Guys, can you give me 2 minutes? I need to drop off. I just want to make some closing comments, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go on, Hazem, and then I do want to jump in. We've got a
not to beat a dead horse, but the whole question regarding North Korea helping, there's no way they can help. I mean, the only way they can help is sending missiles by sea, and it's not the ship that will be taken out if that attempt happens. It's the whole port that will be taken out. The other point I want to make regarding, it's a very important conversation that was happening earlier regarding the oil facilities. The oil facilities are not on the target list at this point for multiple reasons. The U.S. side President Trump has been clear all along that those should not be hit because they affect global markets. On one end, they affect American public opinion. But also, there's a more important aspect that any attack on oil facilities may open, at least in the Iranian regime's mind, the opportunity to strike oil facilities in the region. And that is something that nobody in the region and nobody in the United States want. A final point, actually, to that parachute video, and I've been wanting to mention this for a while. As somebody who have been involved in coordinating air campaigns, I am beyond impressed at the capability, discipline,